Hu Yitian's career was seconds away from collapsing, his name almost erased from the industry, when Dylan Wang made a decision so shocking that it not only saved Hu Yitian's future, but also rewrote the meaning of loyalty in C-drama history. What Dylan did that night left fans speechless, and it's a truth no one expected.
The world of Chinese dramas is dazzling on the outside, but behind the bright lights and glamorous sets lies a world of unimaginable pressure, ruthless competition, and fragile friendships that can either make or break a career. For Hu Yitian, the journey was almost over before it had truly begun, and for many who watched from the sidelines, it seemed like his career was about to vanish into silence. But then, in the middle of despair and fading hope, came an unexpected savior, Dylan Wang. What unfolded between them was not just a simple gesture of support, but a story that would later be whispered about across sets and studios, a story that no one ever expected to hear. It began quietly, with Hu Yitian facing days where he would wake up not knowing if the phone would ring, not knowing if his name was already forgotten. Roles that once seemed certain began slipping through his fingers. Offers that were once overflowing became scarce. There were whispers that he had lost the charm that once carried him to fame, that he was no longer the star audiences longed to see. The silence was deafening, the pressure crushing, and each day seemed like a slow collapse of a dream he had once fought so hard to build. Dylan Wang, however, was at the peak of his rise. Every magazine cover had his face. Every drama with his name attached turned into an instant sensation. People called him the face of a new era of Chinese entertainment. The last person anyone would have expected to intervene in Hu Yitian's fading journey was Dylan. Yet it was Dylan who watched the decline from a distance and quietly decided that something had to be done. The first real moment of change happened on a night when the two crossed paths at an industry gathering. The room was filled with chatter and flashing cameras, but Dylan noticed Hu Yitian standing alone in a corner, his smile faint and his eyes distant. Most people would have looked away, treating him as another forgotten star, but Dylan walked over. What he said that night was simple, but it carried a weight that shook Hu Yitian. Dylan leaned in and whispered, "You are not finished, you just need someone to remind them who you are." It was the beginning of something no one could have predicted. Soon after, Dylan used his growing influence in ways that shocked many behind the scenes. He requested producers to consider Hu Yitian for supporting roles in projects he himself was attached to. He spoke Hu's name in interviews, planting it back into the minds of fans and casting directors. Quietly but consistently, Dylan built a bridge for Hu to return, a bridge made of loyalty and belief in a friend who many had already abandoned. The turning point came during the filming of a large-scale drama, one that had the eyes of the industry fixed upon it. Dylan was the lead, and whispers had circulated that another well-known actor would take on the crucial secondary role. Instead, Dylan insisted, almost demanded, that the role go to Hu Yitian. The production team hesitated, worried about ratings and reputation, but Dylan's conviction was so unshakable that they eventually agreed. That decision would not only change the course of the drama, but also the course of Hu Yitian's entire career. On set, people watched the transformation unfold. At first, Hu carried himself with hesitation, as if afraid to make a mistake, as if one wrong move would end it all again. But Dylan was always there, encouraging, guiding, reminding him that the camera still loved him. There was one scene in particular, a powerful emotional exchange between their characters, that left the entire crew in stunned silence. The raw emotion, the chemistry, the intensity, it was as if Hu had been reborn on screen. Whispers spread quickly, from crew members to producers, from producers to networks, until soon everyone was talking about the comeback that no one saw coming. But the most unforgettable moment was not on screen. It was late one evening after filming, when Dylan found Hu sitting outside the set under the dim glow of the streetlights. Hu's voice was low as he admitted, "I thought it was over for me. I thought I was already gone." Dylan placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "You were never gone. You just needed someone to stand beside you until you remembered who you were." The bond between them became the foundation of one of the most surprising comebacks in the industry. Viewers began to notice. Fans who had once drifted away started returning, and slowly Hu's name regained the shine it had lost. But what stunned everyone most was the loyalty Dylan displayed in a world where loyalty is often the rarest currency. Industry insiders would later reveal that Dylan turned down more lucrative offers just to ensure who had a place to shine. He went against the grain of the industry's cutthroat culture, risking criticism and questioning, all because he believed in something more powerful than fame. He believed in a friend's second chance. The ripple effects were enormous. The drama aired and became a sensation. Social media exploded with praise not only for Dylan's performance, but for Hu Yitian's stunning return. Fans flooded the internet with messages of joy, shock, and relief, many of them pointing out that Hu's presence in the series brought back a depth they had long missed. The story spread quickly, turning into one of the most talked-about comebacks in recent years. Yet only a handful of people knew the real story, that behind the cameras, behind the carefully written scripts, was a bond that had quietly rewritten the ending of a career that once seemed finished. Even now, as fans look back, they often wonder what would have happened if Dylan had stayed silent, if he had simply walked past Hu that night at the gathering. Would Hu's name be nothing more than a faded memory? Would his career have ended in silence? We may never know. But what we do know is this: one act of belief, one moment of loyalty, one friend standing beside another, changed everything. And so, the story of Hu Yitian's career is no longer just about struggle and near loss. It is about the friend who pulled him back from the edge and the second chance that reminded the world that in the cutthroat world of entertainment, sometimes what saves you is not your own strength, but the unexpected hand of someone who refuses to let you fall. The drama had aired, the buzz was deafening, and Hu Yitian was once again a name that filled every corner of social media. Fans celebrated the return of a star they thought was lost forever. Headlines praised his performance as nothing short of breathtaking. Yet what most did not see was the storm that still lingered behind the curtain. Because what Dylan Wang had done for Hu was far more than simple friendship. It was a series of hidden sacrifices, secret moves, and emotional choices that changed not only Hu's life but Dylan's as well. At the height of the show's popularity, industry whispers grew louder. Many insiders wondered why Dylan had risked so much for Hu, why he pushed so hard to give him another chance when others had already abandoned him. Some believed it was loyalty. Others suspected there was more, something deeper, something unspoken that only the two of them truly understood. Behind the cameras, Dylan had been making sacrifices no one knew about. There was one major film offer that came during the shooting of the series, a role that could have catapulted Dylan into international stardom. The producers begged, the agents insisted, but Dylan turned it down. He knew that if he took the role, the project with Hu would be delayed, maybe even cancelled. He chose instead to stay, to anchor Hu's comeback with his presence, silently giving up a golden opportunity that could have changed his own career forever. This was not the only sacrifice. Dylan also shielded Hu from the ruthless criticisms that began circulating once the first episodes aired. Not everyone believed Hu deserved a second chance. There were online attacks, articles questioning his abilities, critics waiting to see him fail. But Dylan intercepted many of these storms, going out of his way in interviews to praise Hu's talent, to redirect the spotlight toward his friend. Each word he spoke acted like a shield, each gesture of support pushing back against the tide of doubt. The emotional climax came one night after filming wrapped. The crew had gone home, the cameras were off, but Dylan found Hu alone in the empty studio, sitting quietly in the shadows. His eyes were wet, his hands trembling as he whispered, "Why are you doing all of this for me? I do not deserve it." Dylan looked at him for a long moment before answering, "Because someone once did the same for me. Because I know what it feels like to be forgotten, to feel like the world no longer wants you. And I promised myself, if I ever had the power, I would never let someone else go through it alone." That confession stunned Hu into silence. It was then he realized that Dylan's strength was not just in his fame or talent, but in his loyalty and his unshakable belief in giving people another chance. That night sealed their bond forever, a bond that would later be described as one of the rarest friendships in the entire industry. But the story did not end with Hu's comeback. Success always brings shadows, and soon the world began digging deeper. Reporters uncovered leaked documents suggesting that Dylan had turned down not just one but multiple high-paying roles during Hu's silent years. Some claimed Dylan even paid out of his own pocket to help stabilize productions that were hesitant to risk casting Hu again. These revelations left fans stunned. They realized the comeback was not just Hu's determination, it was Dylan's invisible hand guiding and protecting every step of the way. The emotional peak of the saga came at an awards ceremony months later. Hu was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, an honor that just months before would have seemed impossible. As his name was called and he walked to the stage, the audience erupted in thunderous applause. He stood at the microphone, his hands shaking, his voice breaking as he began his speech. "I was ready to disappear," he admitted, his voice raw with emotion. "I was ready to accept that my time had ended. But someone refused to let me vanish. Someone stood by me when no one else would. This award does not belong to me alone. It belongs to him. It belongs to Dylan Wang." The entire room turned to Dylan, who sat quietly in the audience, his expression calm but his eyes shining with emotion. For a moment, the glamorous world of entertainment was stripped of its pretenses, and all that remained was the truth, that one man's loyalty had resurrected another man's career. The moment went viral within hours. Clips of Hu's tearful speech spread across every platform. Fans around the world flooded the internet with praise, not only for Hu's return but for Dylan's sacrifice and loyalty. Words like brotherhood, loyalty, and courage trended for days. It was no longer just a story of a comeback. It had become a story of humanity, of rare friendship in an industry known for betrayal and competition. Yet, even as fans celebrated, there was a quiet reality. Dylan never once mentioned his sacrifices. He never spoke of the roles he turned down, the money he gave, the risks he took. He let the world believe that Hu's return was purely his own doing. He stood silently in the background, content to watch his friend shine again. That was the final layer of Dylan's loyalty, his refusal to take credit for what he had done. As time passed, Hu's career soared once again. He was cast in new dramas, his fan base grew stronger, and he finally stood on solid ground. But for those who truly knew the story, it was Dylan Wang who had built that ground beneath him, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. And so the story ended not with a scandal, not with betrayal, but with something far rarer in the entertainment world. A story of true loyalty, of sacrifice, and of one man who refused to let another fall. Dylan Wang and Hu Yitian's bond became legendary, a whispered tale in the halls of studios and sets, a reminder that even in a world driven by fame and power, humanity and friendship could still rewrite destinies. The untold story of Hu Yitian's career is not just about a man who almost disappeared. It is about the one who refused to let him. And in that truth lies the reason this story will be remembered for years to come.
Do you believe Dylan Wang made the ultimate sacrifice for Hu Yitian? Comment below with your thoughts. I'm reading every reply. Thumbs up, don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Bell subscribe for more untold celebrity stories, shocking behind-the-scenes drama, and emotional reveals.